Hey everyone, welcome back. Are you ready to bend your mind a little today?
I think we're going to do more than just bend it.
Haha, yeah. We might just break it wide open this time. We're taking a deep dive into precognition.
Can we actually see glimpses of the future?
That's the big question, right? And we're going to explore it through a fascinating YouTube discussion on Eric Wargo's book, Time Loops.
This book is full of really wild examples. Like, did you know there's a novel that seems to have predicted the Titanic sinking?
Okay, wait, seriously, I've heard that somewhere before, but come on.
It's true. This book, Futility, was published 14 years before the Titanic sank.
No way.
And get this, the ship in the book, it's even called Titan, deemed unsinkable, just like the real Titanic.
Oh my gosh.
And guess how it goes down?
Hits an iceberg.
Yep, an iceberg.
Oh.
It sinks. Crazy, right?
That's more than crazy. That's kind of terrifying. I mean, was the author a time traveler or something?
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Right, of course. But seriously, how do you explain something like that?
It's definitely eerie. But it's important to remember something called hindsight bias.
Hindsight bias, like looking back and thinking we should have seen it coming.
Exactly. Especially with big, tragic events. We tend to connect the dots after the fact and see patterns that might not have been there before.
So you're saying it's more about how our brains work than, actual premonitions?
It's definitely a factor.
Huh?
But then again, Wargo mentioned some other cases that are pretty hard to dismiss.
Oh, like what?
Well, have you heard about the Aberfan disaster?
Vaguely. Refresh my memory.
It was this horrible tragedy in Wales. A coal tip collapsed and buried a school. Lots of children.
Oh, right. That's awful.
Yeah, terrible. But here's the thing. There were reports of people having vivid dreams about a coal tip collapsing, specifically on a school, right before it happened.
Hold on. So they dreamed about the exact disaster before it happened.
It's what some people claim. And there were multiple reports.
Whoa. Okay, now that's creepy. That's like straight out of a horror movie.
Right. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It definitely does. I'm suddenly very interested in this J.W. Dunn guy Wargo talks about. He was obsessed with precognitive dreams.
Oh, yeah, J.W. Dunn, fascinating guy. He lived back in the early 1900s and was convinced these precognitive dreams were a real phenomenon.
And he even came up with a theory to explain it, right? Something called
Serialism.
serialism, like a breakfast cereal. Haha, sorry. So what's the serialism theory all about?
Well, think of your life like a film reel. Dunn believed that our minds could actually move back and forth through this reel, like jumping between frames.
So our minds are time traveling through our own lives.
In a way, yeah. Accessing different points in time, past, present, future. It's kind of like having a remote control for your own timeline.
Okay, that's a wild concept. But if he was onto something this big, why isn't Dunn more famous? Why haven't I heard of him before?
Good question. While Dunn's ideas were groundbreaking, he relied heavily on personal anecdotes and stories. It was hard to scientifically test his theory back then.
So not enough hard evidence.
Right. It was intriguing, but lacked that scientific rigor.
Makes sense. But what's really cool is that Wargo highlights how modern research is taking precognition a lot more seriously these days.
Definitely. There are scientists using actual scientific methods to study these phenomena. It's no longer just a fringe idea.
Okay, now we're talking. Let's get into some of that research. What kind of experiments are they doing?
Well, Wargo talks about Daryl Bem, a researcher at Cornell. He did some pretty controversial studies where he basically reversed classic psychological experiment.
Reversed? What do you mean?
Okay, so think about a typical memory test. You see a list of words, and then you try to recall them. Usually the words you saw first are easiest to remember, right?
Yeah, because they prime your brain or something.
Right. But Bem wanted to test if future events could influence past behavior. So he actually showed people the words after they tried to recall them.
Wait, hold up. So he's suggesting the future is affecting the past. What is this? Back to the Future.
Uh-huh. It does sound a bit sci-fi, doesn't it? But that's essentially what he was testing. And his findings were pretty wild.
I bet. So what did he find? Did people actually remember words they hadn't seen yet?
His results suggested there was some effect. Of course, it's highly controversial.
I can imagine. Messing with time is no joke.
Exactly. A lot of researchers questioned his methods, but whether you believe his findings or not, his work brought attention to the idea of presentiment.
Presentiment. That sounds kind of like a sixth sense.
It's like having a feeling about something before it happens. And there are studies that actually measure your body's physiological responses to stimuli.
Like heart rate and stuff.
Yeah, things like heart rate, sweating, even pupil dilation. And some studies have found these tiny but measurable changes in these responses seconds before something surprising or emotional happens.
Whoa, so it's like our bodies are reacting before our minds even know what's going on.
It's a fascinating possibility, isn't it? Like our subconscious is picking up on something our conscious mind hasn't caught on to yet.
Okay, that is seriously wild. But if this stuff is happening below the surface, how much control do we actually have over our reaction?
Right. It makes you think about the whole idea of free will. And it all ties back to dreams, too. There's a theory that dreams are how we process and consolidate memories.
Right, but if precognition is real, what are we processing in our dreams? Memories of the future.
Well, that's what Wargo asks. Could dreams actually be our brains working through experiences from the future?
That's mind-blowing. Like, our brains are time-traveling librarians sorting through experiences from across our entire timeline.
Right. It totally changes the way we think about dreams.
No kidding. Instead of just being about past stuff, they could be glimpses into what's to come.
Exactly. Like maybe those recurring nightmares aren't just repressed fears from childhood, but warnings from our future selves about something we need to be aware of.
Whoa, now that's a scary thought. But if that's the case, does that mean our fate is sealed? Or do we still have free will?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If we can see the future, even in glimpses, does it mean our choices are already made? Or can we change our destiny?
Ugh, that is deep. Talk about a philosophical rabbit hole. But before we go down that path, there's another concept Wargo brings up that I want to explore. He talks about Jung's idea of synchronicity.
Ah, yes. Synchronicity. Those meaningful coincidences that just seem too perfect to be random.
Right, like when you're thinking about someone and they call you that exact moment.
Exactly. And Wargo suggests that some of these synchronicities might actually be precognitive moments in disguise.
Ooh, okay, I need an example. You got to tell me that story about Jung's patient and the scarab beetle.
All right, so picture this. Jung is with the patient, someone very rational and scientific, doesn't really believe in mystical stuff. She's telling him about a dream she had where a golden scarab beetle appears.
And then a real scarab beetle flies into the room.
You got it. Not golden, but a real scarab beetle comes buzzing in through the window right at that moment.
No way. Okay, what are the odds of that?
Right. It's insane. Jung saw this as a classic example of synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence that defied explanation. But Wargo takes it a step further and asks, could the dream have been a precognitive glimpse of that future encounter?
Whoa. That's blurring the lines between thoughts, dreams, and reality.
Totally. Like, are we all just living in some kind of cosmic movie where our premonitions manifest as real-life events?
Okay, now my brain is officially melting. This is getting a little too matrixy for me.
Uh-huh, I get it. But before you spiral too far down the rabbit hole, let's bring it back to the science.
Okay, good idea. Ground me in some reality here.
Right, because you're totally valid in asking. Is there any scientific basis for how precognition could actually work?
Yeah, that's where I start to get lost. Is this where things get too complicated for us non-scientists?
Not at all. It's definitely mind-bending stuff, but there are some fascinating ideas coming from the world of quantum mechanics that might offer some clues.
Quantum mechanics. Okay, I'm intrigued, but also a little terrified. Break it down for me. How could quantum physics possibly be connected to seeing the future?
Well, one of the key concepts in quantum mechanics is something called non-locality.
Non-locality. That sounds intense. What's that all about?
It's basically this wild phenomena where particles can be linked across vast distances. Like they can influence each other instantly, faster than the speed of light.
Wait, so you're saying two particles could be on opposite sides of the universe, and if you poke one, the other reacts immediately?
That's the gist of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Like they're communicating through some secret channel that transcends space and time.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. But how does that relate to precognition?
Well, some physicists believe that if particles can be connected across space in this way, maybe they can also be connected across time.
Hold on, so you're saying future events could potentially influence past ones. Is that even possible?
It's definitely a mind-bending idea, but it's one that some serious scientists are exploring.
So are we talking about time travel here? The idea that the future can actually reach back and affect the past?
It's not quite that simple. Scientists use the term retrocausation to describe this idea that the future can influence the past.
Retrocausation. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. But seriously, how could the future possibly affect the past? Doesn't that violate the laws of physics?
It definitely challenges our everyday understanding of cause and effect. Think of it like ripples in a pond. What if those ripples could travel backwards in time, influencing the water before the rock was even thrown?
Okay, now my brain is doing backflips. It still feels impossible, but I'm starting to see what you mean. So you're saying that maybe our choices today aren't just shaping our future, but they could actually be influenced by our future selves.
It's a wild idea, isn't it? And it brings us right back to Wargo's concept of time loops. Our actions could be constantly influencing and being influenced by the future, creating this complex web of interconnected events.
So it's not just a straight line from past to present to future. It's more like we're all part of this grand, interconnected dance through time where everything is influencing everything else.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get really interesting. It's like we're all part of this cosmic dance.
Right, and we're just starting to learn the steps. But if precognition is real, if we can actually get glimpses of what's to come, what does that mean for us in our daily lives? Like, how can we apply this stuff?
Well, that's one of the things that Wargo really emphasizes in the book. He talks about the importance of paying attention to our intuition.
You mean those gut feelings, like when something just feels right or wrong, even if you can't explain why?
Exactly. Those moments where you just know something, even without any logical reason. Wargo suggests that these intuitions might actually be signals from our future selves.
Hold on, so you're saying that when I have a hunch about something, it could be my future self trying to send me a message. That's wild. But if that's true, why wouldn't they just send a clear message like a text or something?
Haha, right. Why all the cryptic signals? Well, it's probably not that simple. Maybe sending a direct message from the future would create some kind of paradox or interfere with the natural flow of time.
Okay, that makes sense. But if it's all these subtle hints and gut feelings, how are we supposed to decipher those messages? It's like trying to read a book written in a language you don't
So
understand.
that's where dreams come in?
Dreams. But they're so random and bizarre. How could we possibly make sense of future messages hidden in our dreams?
That's why Wargo recommends keeping a dream journal. He says to write down your dreams as soon as you wake up, capturing as many details as you can remember. Over time, you might start to notice recurring patterns, symbols, or themes.
So it's like learning the language of our subconscious mind, the way it speaks to us through symbols and metaphors.
Exactly. And by paying attention to those patterns in our dreams, we might be able to glean insights from our future selves. Sort of like a coded message that we have to learn to decode.
I'm starting to see how all of this ties together, but it still feels a bit overwhelming. Like if we can catch glimpses of the future, even in these subtle ways, does it mean we have no control over our destiny? Is free will just an illusion?
That's a big question, and one that philosophers have been debating for centuries. Does knowing the future limit our choices, or does it empower us to make more informed decisions?
It's a paradox, isn't it? If you know what's coming, it feels like your path is already set. But at the same time, that knowledge could give you the opportunity to change course or avoid potential pitfalls.
Right, and I think that's where precognition gets really interesting. It doesn't necessarily take away our free will, but it reveals that we're operating within a system that's far more complex and interconnected than we realize.
It's like we're all playing a game with a set of rules we don't fully understand, and precognition gives us a peek at the cheat codes.
Exactly. It's not about knowing the future with absolute certainty, but about gaining a deeper understanding of the possibilities and the forces that shape our lives.
That makes sense. But Wargo also talks about the implications of precognition for society as a whole, right? Like what would happen if this stuff became widely accepted and understood?
Yeah, that's one of the most thought-provoking parts of the book, he asks. If precognition were to become mainstream, how would it change the world?
That's a big question. Imagine a world where people could reliably see into the future, even if it's just glimpses or hunches. It would revolutionize everything.
Think about the legal system. Would precognitive testimony be admissible in court? Could it help prevent crimes before they happen? Or what about healthcare? Would precognitive screenings allow us to identify and treat diseases earlier?
The possibilities are mind-blowing, but it also raises a lot of ethical questions. Like,
Yeah.
who gets access to this information, and how do we prevent it from being used for harmful purposes?
Exactly. It's a Pandora's box of possibilities, both positive and negative. And it makes you wonder if we as a society are even ready for such a radical shift in our understanding of reality.
It's a lot to process, that's for sure. But I think that's the point, right? Wargo wants us to start thinking about these questions, to engage with the possibilities and the potential implications of precognition.
Exactly. He's not trying to give us all the answers. He's inviting us to join the conversation, to explore these mysteries, and to expand our understanding of what's possible.
And in a way, isn't that what this whole deep dive is all about? Exploring the fringes of reality, questioning our assumptions, and opening ourselves up to new ways of seeing the world.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes these topics so fascinating. They challenge us to step outside of our comfort zones and to embrace the mystery and wonder of the unknown.
So, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the one key message you want our listeners to take away?
I think the most important thing is to remember that we are not just passive observers in this grand cosmic play. We are active participants, co-creating our reality with every thought, every choice, and every action. And that's an incredibly empowering realization.
So, we're not just along for the ride, we're actually in the driver's seat, shaping our destinies and influencing the world around us.
Exactly. And that's both a privilege and a responsibility. We have the power to choose the direction we want to go, to make choices that align with our values, and to create a future that's more in line with our highest aspirations.
And maybe, just maybe, by paying attention to those subtle whispers from the future, those intuitive nudges and dream symbols, we can start to navigate this journey with a little more wisdom and grace.
And who knows what amazing discoveries await us along the way.
Okay, I gotta say, that was a wild ride. Precognition, time loops, quantum mechanics. My brain is definitely feeling a little overloaded right now.
Yeah. It's a lot to take in all at once. But isn't it amazing to consider all these possibilities? It really makes you question everything you thought you knew about reality.
No kidding. I feel like we've just dipped our toes into this vast ocean of mystery. But before we get swept away by the current, I want to bring it back to our listeners for a minute. If someone's feeling a little lost after this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway they should hold on to?
I think the most important thing to remember is that we are not just passive observers in this grand cosmic play. We're active participants, co-creating our reality with every thought, every choice, every action.
So we're not just along for the ride, we're actually shaping our destinies and influencing the world around us.
Exactly. And that realization can be incredibly empowering. It means we have a responsibility to use this power wisely, to make choices that align with our values, and to create a future that we want to see.
It's like we're all weaving a giant tapestry, and every thread we add affects the entire pattern, not just our own little corner.
And that tapestry is constantly evolving, responding to our intentions and actions. It's a dynamic interplay between free will and fate, between the choices we make and the forces that shape our lives.
So it's not about trying to predict the future with perfect accuracy or control every outcome, right? It's more about becoming aware of the choices we're making and the impact those choices might have, not just in the present, but also rippling through time.
Precisely. And that awareness can help us make more conscious decisions, ones that are aligned with our deepest values and aspirations.
But how do we even begin to grasp the full extent of those ripples? It's almost impossible to imagine how our actions today might affect the world years, decades, or even centuries from now.
It's true. We can't see the full tapestry, but we can focus on weaving our own section with care and intention. And who knows, maybe by becoming more attuned to our own inner guidance, to those whispers from the future, we can start to make choices that create a brighter and more harmonious pattern for everyone.
That's a beautiful thought. So, what are some practical steps our listeners can take to start tapping into that inner guidance, those echoes from the future? We talked about dream journaling and paying attention to intuition, but are there any other tools or practices that might be helpful?
I think one of the most important things is simply to cultivate a sense of curiosity and openness. Don't dismiss those strange coincidences, those synchronicities that seem to defy logic. Explore those feelings, those hunches, those whispers from the unknown.
So, it's about trusting those moments when something just feels right, even if we can't explain it rationally.
Exactly. Those feelings might be signposts, guiding us towards a path that's aligned with our highest potential. And who knows, maybe by paying attention to those subtle nudges, we can start to weave a more meaningful and fulfilling tapestry for ourselves and for the world.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mysteries of time, consciousness, and the possibility of precognition.
It's been a pleasure exploring these mind-bending concepts with you and our listeners.
And to everyone listening out there, remember to keep dreaming, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep your hearts and minds open to the infinite possibilities that await. Until next time, keep diving deep.